This episode of the Flying Doctor podcast has been made possible with the support of RFDS national partner HCF, Australia's largest not-for-profit health fund. HCF's partnership with the RFDS across Australia reflects its commitment to bettering healthcare access and outcomes for those in remote and rural regions.
You're listening to a DM podcast.
It was 6:30 at night, so I didn't want to annoy people or the ambulance or anyone, the volunteers, so I just walked down to the office. I walked down and I thought, this doesn't feel good, this is a heart attack. I looked around the corridor and just thought, if I am going to die, this isn't a bad place to die. It's quite a spectacular place. I've had a lot of fun here. I rang up my mate to tell him that I was going down to look after someone. I think I'm having a heart attack. He was already 3 bottles of wine deep with his wife, and he just said, good luck, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. He was the one that's going to be responsible for my funeral.
Hi, my name is Lana Mitchell from the Royal Flying Doctor Service. This is a podcast about life in the bush, mateship, courage, and the role that the Royal Flying Doctor Service plays in serving rural and remote communities. This is the Flying Doctor Podcast.
My name is Sophie Campbell and I'm a communications assistant with the Royal Flying Doctor Service. The stories we share each week through the Flying Doctor Podcast come from all around and from all across Australia. And the RFDS acknowledges and pays respects to the traditional owners of the lands on which we work, and we recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and the community.
In episode number 79, I interviewed Steve Mogridge after he suffered a major stroke when driving between 2 remote WA townships. With no use of one whole side of his body, he continued driving to get himself to the closest hospital, and then he dragged his body up the emergency ramp to the front door to call for help. Very scary to have such a severe health issue occur when you're a significant distance from help. In this episode, I'm interviewing Ryan Franks, who had a similar but even more dangerous situation occur. Again, in a remote area, Ryan had to be very proactive to see that he would actually live. Ryan is a trained health professional and he's worked as a remote area nurse in many locations, including mines, power stations and ski fields. He's seen his share of accidents and injuries and illness, and he knows the signs of a heart attack well. But one day he realised he had those very symptoms and he was experiencing a major heart attack. Hello, Ryan.
Morning, Lana. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be talking to you. It's clear that you've lived to tell this tale, which is a good measure of your own health expertise.
It certainly was a challenge.
Before we dive into this terrifying adventure of yours, tell me a little bit about your career. How did you get into nursing?
I got into nursing. Mum was a nurse and I was always interested in what Mum was doing with her patients, but nursing wasn't my first choice. Doing physical education, PE, was my first choice. Bachelor of Woodwork was my second one, and nursing was my fourth choice. I didn't change my mind until I went to schoolies up on the Gold Coast, and there was a girl who told me that she was doing nursing, and I changed my mind at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I rang up my mum and said, Mum, I'm doing nursing. And that's how I actually got into nursing. I figured there was going to be a lot of females doing nursing. I might as well go and take my chances with them.
Very much an optimist, Ryan.
Very much so, very much so.
So you did nursing training. Did you stay there in Queensland to start your career? Because I understand you've done quite a bit of work all over the place.
Yeah, no, I started the John Hunter Hospital and I always got excited and the adrenaline of working in emergency. When it was raining and hearing the sirens, that's what I wanted to be a part of. But I never started actually in emergency. I went up to Queensland and they offered me a medical ward, a surgical ward on the Gold Coast. I thought that would be fantastic. But Brisbane offered me, the Royal Brisbane Hospital offered me a bone marrow transplant unit, and that was just too good an opportunity to pass up. So I ended up driving up to Brisbane, but back then we were using maps and there was no Google or anything like that. And I kept getting further and further away from the beach. And then I ended up in Brisbane. But working at the bone marrow transplant was just too good an opportunity to miss. So I ended up doing 18 months there. But then when they wouldn't give me time off for my holidays, I went to emergency and said, I'm ready. I think I'm ready to come down and start an emergency. And that was where my love of emergency started.
So it's majorly, as a nurse and working in emergency departments, I've got to ask this question. What happened to the girl, for starters?
I did meet her, but nothing ever happened. Nothing eventuated. There might have been a couple of other girls I met, but I didn't actually get to meet up with Melissa Fraser again.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a bummer, but okay. So then you're doing all this work. At what point did you end up saying, "Oh, look, I'm done with working in regular hospitals, and I'm going to go and start looking a bit further afield"?
It was after applying to go on the helicopters and working for Royal Brisbane. They started taking paramedics and they stopped taking nurses for 12 months. And so all the training that I was doing leading up to trying to get on the helicopters got washed away. So I ended up going up to central Queensland, a little town called Alpha, miles from nowhere, a town of 400 people, a shire of 1,100. But that's where I became more self-aware of who I was as a person and working in a country setting rather than a coastal setting, which I thought I was always going to be. But I learned a little bit about the bush, about the people out there, and just absolutely loved it. The fact that I started playing rugby league for the town even made it more special.
So there really is a big difference, isn't there, when you go from a regional or a metro area and then head out to a small country township. The culture is very different, isn't it?
There was. You knew everybody. You've seen everybody every day. And they would ask about you. They'd invite you around to their houses. They become more personable out there as well.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I come across, I never believed I'd be coming across as a nurse by myself working. My first day there was a gunshot to the chest, and there was no doctor, no director of nursing there. So a self-inflicted gunshot to the chest, and that was my first day. And from then on, I thought, what else could happen out there? And it was a ridiculous amount of injuries and accidents that you never predicted.
I have interviewed a number of actual remote area nurses, and what they've said to me is you just never know what's going to walk in the door, and you really have to use all of those skills that you've been trained in and that you've learned, even if it's just in theory, because you don't have that team to suddenly, if you're in a big city hospital, you can turn and ask for advice or turn to a team or whatever, and somebody will come in and you'll suddenly be part of a larger group to manage something. But when you're in some of these remote communities, that's just not the case.
No, I become the nurse. I become the person that they turn to. It was just me and the doctor or another senior nurse. And then I actually become the ambulance driver of that vehicle as well, and we're turning up to fresh accidents. And my rugby league team was there holding the drips up for me, but it all come down to our small team and our decisions that we were making in these critical events.
Did you find it fulfilling or stressful or both?
No, it was really fulfilling, but it got to a realisation that the skills and all the study and everything I've learned from working at Royal Brisbane Hospital, I was able to apply kind of in the field. So when the pressure came onto me, I knew I could handle pressure pretty well.
Wow, well, that's great. So when was that? Are we talking, how many years ago?
That was late 1990s. I went from that town of 400 people and decided, let's go to England instead of work in London.
Okay, that again, a whole nother shift. What was that like? Were you working in a big city there?
Yeah, I was working in London in a trauma unit in the Whittington, yeah.
Were you there for a long period?
2.5 years.
Yeah, that's a fair while.
Yeah.
What brought you back to Australia again?
Weather.
There's a Gold Coast boy saying, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get out here and see the sun." A Newcastle boy, but somebody who spent his life on the coast and said,
"The weather and the beaches, I needed that vitamin." Yeah, it was just time to come home and see the relaxed Australians. Yeah, it was a bit too much.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, where did your travels take you to then?
Well, I got back and a mate that I met over in WA, he said, over in England, he said, have you ever been to WA? I went, no. He goes, I've got to look after a house in Scarborough Beach for 6 months. My auntie and uncle are going on the QE2. Do you want to come over? I said to Mum, I'm going to Western Australia. She goes, how long for? I said, I've got no idea. So I ended up going over there, and I started off working with Luna, Kalgoorlie, Meekatharra, Port Hedland. But yeah, and I saw some of the beaches over there and just, this is incredible.
Just absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
And did you find that you were just continually building on your skills as a nurse and in remote communities and
from
constantly?
Everywhere. Yeah, from everywhere I was working, you were getting more and more remote, and you had to rely on a small team that you had. So it wasn't until I ended up working up at Port Hedland, they offered me a job at Coral Bay for the first time back in 2004. And there was back then there was obviously no doctor. There was one every 2 weeks. Mobile phone coverage wasn't great, but the beaches were stunning.
Coral Bay, we've interviewed a number of people on the podcast that have been travelling through Coral Bay, and I've never been there, but gosh, it sounds amazing in terms of...
It is amazing.
Yeah.
That whole coast.
Yeah. Now, I understand you've never worked as a nurse for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, but have you had lots of, or have you had various touch points with the RFDS while you've been working in WA?
Yeah, I have. I put a patients on there from Alpha and then Wiluna, then Meekatharra, and then Coral Bay. I mean, they were my lifeline. They were the people that would come and pick up most of my patients. So I worked there for about 18 months. Yeah, and having waiting at 3 o'clock in the morning, waiting for that plane to land and pick up your patients after road trauma or something like that. Incredible. But yeah,
Let's talk about Coral Bay because that's where you were in 2017 when things got a little bit scary there for a bit. Tell me about that day because you weren't feeling great. Was there a lead up to that? Were you particularly stressed or particularly feeling?
yeah, I was going through a breakup of my marriage at the time, so there was a lot of stress with that as well, and a lot of anxiety, and I guess my mood was in a depressive mood as well. So I wasn't sleeping very well. I was quite angry with the world as well. Then trying to work 50 hours a week at work, plus on call, and then leading up to the day, I was actually feeling pretty good because I'd met some girls playing pool at the time, and they
Yeah.
were wearing Santa hats, and then I saw them the next day and they were in the bikinis with their Santa hats on. I got a photo and I thought, this is a magnificent place. My attitude was actually changing. I thought, I
Right.
can't wait for a new season to come along, can't wait for Christmas and what people may come to enjoy where I am.
So you'd been at work, and could you walk me through the series of events that happened that day? Because you were feeling a little better and you went to work, and then what happened?
I was feeling fine. Finished the day, went home, and I was having 2 or 3 beers when I finished work, and then I was also having 2 or 3 cigarettes of coping with my anxiety and stuff. Got home, had a beer, and then I got a text message from my ex's auntie saying she just wanted to thank me for everything I'd done for her and her partner back at the Sunshine Coast. And I said, you obviously know what's happened. And she said, oh, no, please don't tell me. So I could just feel my blood pressure rising and the angst rising and the anxiety rising. I didn't say anything. I just said thank you very much and hung up, but I could feel it after that. Went back outside to finish that beer, and then I could just feel my left shoulder really, really sore. I thought, I've just been moving all those Thomas packs down at work for the day. I thought, must have been the Thomas packs, the emergency packs. That must have been why my shoulder sore. So what you'd normally do with something sore, you have 3 Panadol and you wash that down with the beer.
That's not health advice, just so
It's
you know.
not health advice at all.
But okay.
So I was sitting there for a while, and then like 15 minutes later, I think, oh, this isn't feeling very well. I don't feel so well. I thought, it must be one of the pies from the bakery, but Waz's pies are brilliant. So I thought, oh, I'll have some milk and that'll settle everything down. I'll be fine. I went and lay down, and as I laid down, and the sweat was just profusely running off me. I just felt so sick. And then I got up and I looked at myself in the mirror and went, oh, you look green. Yeah, this isn't right. And the pain, you could just feel it right across the chest, and the tightness was there.
Now, being a health professional, what did you know all of these symptoms had to be an indication of?
It was looking like it was a heart attack. I pretty much knew it was a heart attack, and I just didn't want to believe I was having a heart attack.
Did it freak you out being in that situation of being home alone? And
did freak me out in the fact that I knew there was no nurse there, no other doctor there, and if it was a heart attack, who the hell was going to treat me? What was going to happen? And then if it was a heart attack, I was also going to leave the town without a nurse as well. So I just wanted to make sure that if it was a heart attack, that I actually made sure that I was right. I was having a heart attack and not just symptoms.
so what did you do?
It was 6:30 at night, so I didn't want to annoy people or the ambulance or anyone, the volunteers. So I just walked down to the office, which is about 200 metres away, and I walked down and I thought, this doesn't feel good. This is a heart attack. I looked around at Coral Bay and just thought, if I am going to die, this isn't a bad place to die. It's quite a spectacular place. I've had a lot of fun here. So I thought, that's not too bad. I've had a good life. I rang up my mate to tell him that I was going down to look after someone. I think I'm having a heart attack, and I'll talk to him tomorrow. But he was already 3 bottles of wine deep with his wife, and he just said, good luck, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. So I thought, well, he was the one that's going to be responsible for my funeral, and the songs that were going to be played. I wanted a happy funeral. I went, oh, well, that's fine. And then as I was walking down, people kept stopping me, and they said, Ryan, have you got the results of that STI check I did the other day? I was like, not at the moment. I think, Jesus, it's getting hard to breathe. I said, come down and see me tomorrow. Got down to the clinic. I thought, I better open. I got in the door. I thought, I better leave the door open. I thought, if I collapse, I said, no one will be able to get in if I go in after hours and lock the door, which is supposed to do. So I thought the best thing to do is leave the door open or unlocked. So if people need to get in, they might find me on the ground if anything else happens. But yeah, that was it. And walked in.
What were you planning to do once you got there?
Well, take some aspirin, do an ECG, ring the doctor, hand myself over. And that was my plan.
So did you do that?
I walked in, took some aspirin and tried to do an ECG. Because of the amount of sweat that was coming off me, the ECG dots kept falling off. And I couldn't read the ECG, so I could only read half the bloody ECG. So I thought, well, how am I going to... I can't hand that over half a story. I'm very good at my job. I'm usually pretty precise with everything. So I thought, well, maybe I might be able to take some blood. And I remember I went over and took to take some blood, but last time I tried to take blood when I was in England, I failed on myself. So this time I was like, don't miss this time, get the blood. So I managed to get it first time, got the blood. I thought, well, that'll take 10 minutes. That might tell me whether there's a troponin rise, which might indicate a heart attack. And I'll come back in time and put this ECG on like 30-second delay. So I'm standing there trying to put on delay. As I'm standing there looking, pulse rate going from 120 down to 100, down to 80, I'm looking at it going, why is it slowing down? Why is it slowing down? And then it got down to like 30. I'm looking at it going, that doesn't look good. And then everything just went white and I started like kind of shaking. I couldn't hold on to the ECG machine anymore. And I've gone, oh no. And everything just went white. I've just hit the ground. I thought I was dead then. It must have been, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, I'm not sure, but I was on the ground. I kind of come to, and it was like someone had tipped a litre of water on me on the ground. There was just that much sweat. I had absolutely no energy, and I had to try and pick myself up just to even sit on the seat before trying to get back on the bed. And that's when I had...
Had you contacted anybody to let them know?
That's what I was going to say. That's when I decided I better contact someone and get help. And I always know the ambulance volunteers are always on call, so there's a phone number. So I just rang the ambulance volunteers, and I got a lady who I'd known for about 20 years there, who become like kind of everybody's mother in town. And I rang Sandra, and I said, Sandra, I need you to come down and do an ECG. I've got chest pain. She goes, why can you do it? I said, I've got chest pain. She went, you've got chest pain. I said, I need you to come down. I think I'm having a heart attack. She went, oh, shit, I'll be down in a second. So she come flying down. She took a look at me and said, have you rung the doctor yet? I said, no, come and press the button. I need the ECG. So she come over and pressed the button. Then I could just see these ST elevations on the ECG lead. Went, well, now I can ring the doctor and hand myself over. Yeah. And then the troponin was also getting cooked too.
Wow. So, okay. So you managed to get the ECG working and you managed to get that reading.
Yeah.
Who was the doctor that you contacted? Was it the local?
No, it was a telehealth from WA Telehealth. So I rang the emergency telehealth service and just handed over like there's a 44-year-old male who's presented with central crushing chest pain.
And by the way, it's me.
That was the last thing I told him. That it was me. After handing myself over, gave him the whole story, told him what I'd done, the aspirin was done, the ECG, ST elevation, no history, and it's me. She went, sorry. I said, it's me. She goes, but you're the nurse. I went, yes, it's me. I've got the chest pain. And she was like, oh, my God. She got on the screen, had a look. And I told her what happened. She goes, don't you get off that bed again.
And is Sandra there, the ambulance lady? Is she there?
She was there. She freaked. She started crying because she'd known me that long, and then she rang for backup. So she rang the second volunteer ambulance to come down as well. And Matt, who come down to help, he was pretty chill. He was a Kiwi fella, and he's pretty chill. And I hadn't met him before, but he was. I think he'd had something to calm himself down after work as well.
Well, so like from a health perspective, from that health lens, if you have somebody that's having a heart attack in a remote area and you said you took some aspirin, you did the ECG so that you could communicate what's happening with your heart and your blood levels and so on and so forth to that doctor over telehealth. But what can actually be done in a remote setting to actually alleviate that situation?
Well, we needed to put some IV cannulas into myself. So I said to B said to me, can anybody do that? I looked at Matt and I said, do you know how to put a cannula? He goes, got no idea. I said, I'll do it myself. She goes, you'll do it? I said, I'll do it myself. So I end up sticking one back in the hole that I made before when I took my blood. So I stuck it back in that hole into my left arm. And then they wanted me to make a heparin infusion while they worked out what to do in this situation because this hasn't been done.
What's a heparin?
There's another blood thinning medication that keeps it stable, but it won't dissolve the clot.
Okay.
So it's just something to do while they worked out what to do because this has never been done before. No one's ever thrombolyzed themselves before. So what they wanted me to do was set up this heparin infusion, but I had to make that in the middle of having this chest pain and the heart attack and sweating profusely. That pain was getting pretty intense, and still keep an eye on my blood pressure and my pulse and my ECG. And at the time, my blood pressure started falling as well. And she said, "Can you put a second IV in?" And I put two 18-gauge cannulas, and these are pretty big cannulas, but if I missed, there was just going to be blood everywhere. So I had to stick one into my right arm with my left hand and not miss as well, and then try and tape it down without blood pissing out everywhere. And then put up like a trauma pump set because my blood pressure was falling and my pulse was going up, and we needed some IV access and then show these guys how to actually get to this medication.
Were the ambulance guys that were there, did they have, because they're just volunteers, right?
They're volunteers, yeah, but they were able to go into the cupboard and get me the medication that I needed and bring my emergency trolley over as well. So I had live pads on at this stage too that were connected up to the ECG machine, and live pads means it was automated. So if I went to a ventricular fibrillation, because I was already having runs of VT, but I wasn't going to last long with runs of VT before it went into a VF.
Hold on. You're using lots of terminology here.
It would have gone into a rhythm that was incompatible with life. So it would have just blood all over the place. I would have needed electricity to restart my heart. So I had live pads on, knowing that full well that I could go unconscious and they might have to press the button to start my heart again.
Right. So I didn't know that an ECG machine also has the capability of being a defibrillator.
Oh, no, I had the ECG on one side. I had the monitor on the other side.
Oh, wow. Okay. So ECG monitoring on one side, defibrillator on the other side. Yeah. You've got the pads on your chest, and at any point where essentially your heart stops, then the ambulance volunteers are going to have to press the button on the defibrillator to shock you back or bring your heart back into action. Yeah,
and then start CPR on me. So I said to them, good luck.
Did that happen? Did they have to do that?
No, well, I said, you're just going to have to lie me flat after you press that button, start compressions and come around here, and this is where the oxygen mask is. You'll need to put that on as well.
Wow. But they didn't have to do that.
We had about, I reckon 10, 15 minutes before that happened. So that's how quickly it was evolving. So it was time critical before I needed a drug to dissolve the clot that was causing the heart attack, and that's what I did.
And through that infusion, which was happening through the cannula that you had put in.
Yeah. That infusion wasn't doing anything. What I needed was a drug called tenecteplase to dissolve that clot. So it's only a quick 10-second injection. But we don't do that willy-nilly. So you need a team, basically, and you need an identifiable cause. But at that time, with that blood pressure falling, that chest pain getting more intense, and these runs of VT, which would somehow turn into ventricular fibrillation, and my heart would need that electricity, we need to have this drug to stop that from happening, to stop the clot from causing my heart to stop. So I need to give myself this drug. And this drug, we had to discuss, it can kill you. You can bleed out. It can cause another irregular rhythm, or it can save your life. What would you like to do? I said, I've been waiting to do this for the last 10 minutes. Can we now do this? Can I give myself this drug? And even making up this drug could be an issue as well. When I first started making up at Royal Brisbane Hospital, I remember going through 3 different kind of vials at $2,000 a pop and keep messing it up before I actually got the right way to draw it up. So from experience, I learned how to draw it up well. So even drawing it up, making sure that I got all the medication out of the vial that I could. Yeah. And I was still sweating and I still had pain and it was getting intense. But, I wanted this drug in to see what was going to happen.
What was the pain level like? Was it at that stage where you're just having trouble focusing, or were you so full of adrenaline that you were just going to, no matter what, you were going to make this happen?
Yeah, it was no matter what, I was going to make this happen. The pain I could put up with, pain's only temporary. I know that I could put up with pain. I gave myself just a little bits of fentanyl, which is a narcotic, just to relieve the pain a little bit, but it was still pretty intense. It was like someone was standing on you. But I could handle that for a while, but you can't handle it for long before, you become unconscious kind of thing. So I really wanted to give myself the best chance of surviving this and to thrombolyse early rather than wait any longer for any help to arrive or anything else to happen.
So you said that it took 10 to 15 minutes. Did they end up having to take action to assist you, or did the action that you had already taken?
No, the action that I had taken, it worked, and give myself that tenecteplase, the pain kind of went away within 2 minutes, 3 minutes of giving myself this drug, and all I had to do then was just make sure that there was no kind of reperfusion, arrhythmias, and everything was going to be okay, and then cross my fingers and just wait for the flying doctors to come and get me. So it was it was at that moment, it was either going to go one way or the other.
Right. Right.
Yep. And I didn't want to die wondering. I wanted to take action. I didn't want to wait and leave it to anybody else. I'd rather have a crack.
Yeah, I'd rather die under my own hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I'd rather live under my own hands. What better choice? What better chance to see how good a nurse you are and to have this pressure on yourself?
Yeah, the amount of courage that it takes just to inject yourself or to cannulate yourself or whatever is one thing, but to have to manage and negotiate that landmine of I'm having a heart attack and I need to both manage my symptoms and manage what I know to be the cause and also communicate on a long distance line what's happening to the doctor and make sure that everybody's coordinated. It shows an amazing amount of fortitude on your part. Oh my gosh.
I did have people with me in the clinic as well. The volunteers were there, and then because I'd worked there so long, word got out what was happening, so people wanted to come down and help as well. But that drug, the tenecteplase, that's the most powerful drug I've ever held. I've held bone marrow, and I thought that was pretty rare. But to hold a drug that's going to dissolve the clot that's causing the heart attack that could potentially either kill you or save you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was a hell of a moment, watching that go through and seeing what was going to happen.
So do you remember, was there at any point that you lost consciousness or were you conscious the whole way through?
Only when I tried to do that ECG when I first walked in, and I thought I was dead then. When I tried to put it on delay and everything just went white, I just went, oh shit, I thought that was it then.
Yeah, when your heart rate went down to 30.
Yeah.
So do you remember the flying doctor arriving?
Yeah, I remember the flying doctor because I had about another 2 or 3 hours to wait. I had to ring my mother up as well and tell Mum what was happening over in Newcastle. And I remember my mate ringing up from Exmouth because work got out, and he rings up, and my ringtone is actually the Bee Gees Staying Alive as well. So that was getting played. But yeah, ringing Mum up and saying, Mum, I'm just having a heart attack. I've got to give myself some tenecteplase. I said, I'll ring in the morning when I get to Perth. I can only imagine what she was thinking. I was pretty confident in my skills, but yeah, I know things could have gone pretty. I didn't want to worry her too much. I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I thought if I sounded confident enough, she'd be okay with it. And I think she's heard a few stories from me before in my past 30 years that, yeah, I'll be okay.
Yeah. What were your friends doing when they were calling you? Were they saying, hang in there, mate? Or were they saying, oh, you're joshing me, this is all, you're pulling my leg?
Yeah, they just wanted to know if they could come down and help, if there was anything I needed, and that was it, yeah. But once word got out, people kind of knew who I was anyway, and if anyone was going to have a heart attack and go through this, they knew it would be me, and I'd be okay to do it.
So you waited for those 2 hours, and when the flying doctor arrived, what happened?
Yeah, I had to hand myself over to the flying doctor, so I gave him the whole story of what happened word by word, and what medications I'd had, and what happened with the ECGs and the runs of VT, and what time the tenecteplase. And then when I got loaded up in the plane, it wasn't until I flew back over Coral Bay and looked down, I went, oh, shit, that was close. Then I thought about my friends, my family. I thought, wow, I only just died. And that was the only time then that I actually lost my emotions. And before that, I was pretty calm and pretty cool. But yeah, it wasn't until I had them looking after me that I could fully relax. And I was still having runs of VT on the plane. I thought, this still isn't good, but I had someone else to look after me then, and they just wanted to hear about the story.
You then could just be the patient and could relax and
I could, be the patient and relax. I knew that I was going to have to go down to Perth and have stents put in, but then I didn't have to do anything anymore. I could just lay there then.
Yeah. So how were you feeling?
Still adrenaline. There's still a lot of adrenaline. I didn't sleep. I hadn't slept for like 18 hours already, so I was still pretty pumped up. And then when I got down there, they took me from emergency up to the ward as well. And then you go through all the admission process as well. And then everyone wants to hear the story as well, because this has never been done before. And when we get in hand over there's a nurse at Coral Bay who thrombolised himself. They went, no, this can't be true. This never happens. It's never happened. So they wanted to come in and hear the story, and then they wanted to see how well I was doing. But by that stage, I had no pain and I was feeling pretty well. I was getting a little bit tired, mind you, but yeah, I was still feeling pretty well.
Yeah, but from a health perspective, you're a hero.
No. I had a job to do. I had a job to do, and I didn't even claim overtime.
Oh, good on you. So, didn't even claim overtime.
Well, I'm still the nurse.
Yeah, you were working. You were definitely working. So tell me, when you went to Perth, they put stents in, I presume? Were you there for a long time?
Yeah, I was only in Perth coronary care unit for 3 days, and then I got discharged. But they wanted me to stay in Perth to make sure that my rehab was going okay. And the mate that I rang up and told him I was having the heart attack and said good luck, he flew over to Perth the next day to make sure I was all right. He's an emergency nurse, mind you. So when we got discharged, we were sitting in the hotel room, and I was got my bottle of GTN spray. I said, well, there's nothing on TV, let's go for a walk. He'd never been to West Australia before. So we started walking. We walked down to the river, and I thought, this isn't good. We're not doing anything. And so I took him to Little Creatures Brewery. So the open air brewery. Well, I had to buy him a beer for coming over.
I see. Okay. But was the rehab a long process for you, or was it something that you were already quite familiar with in terms of in your nursing career? Have you come across a lot of patients that have a rehab program?
Not really, because once from emergency, we don't see what happens. They go to a coronary care unit and they get discharged. I didn't really have much rehab at all. I stayed in Perth for 1 week, and then I went back to Coral Bay. I took another week off work, so I had 2 weeks off work. So I had that week off work, and I just kind of just laid down by the beach really and didn't do a great deal until my mate wanted to go kayaking, and we kayaked 500 metres out to the reef. So that was interesting to see how things were going, but I took it pretty easy and made sure people were with me. But I didn't want to put the small town through Coral Bay through that again if something like that happened. So that was in my own trepidation then.
Yeah. Now, were those people that were there at Coral Bay with you in the nurses' station, were they traumatised by what they'd been through? Did you have to sort of fill them out a bit?
No, they'd known me for a while, and they've known what kind of character I am as well. And they bring in a lot of patients, and I look after a lot of the patients that come through. So I usually do it in a humorous manner. But we've had some very hairy situations over there. We always debrief afterward. When I come back to town, I just took them out for a meal and drinks just to thank them. And, yeah, they were pretty sweet. But, yeah, Sandra was certainly worried that this was going to be the end result of Ryan. Matt, the other guy that came down, we just went and had a glass of wine together and had a chat about it. That was it. Yeah.
Well, so are you still, obviously you're not in Coral Bay now, and this is in 2017. Have you had any further heart issues since that point over the last 5 years or so?
No, none at all. I've been slowly improving my exercise, my walking. I certainly don't run, but swimming as well. But no, nothing. I ended up going over to work in New Zealand in the mountains and Mount Hutton as a ski field nurse as well. Right. And I was snowboarding. So, yeah, I was certainly pushing the limit of snowboarding.
So, okay, well, that's great that there's been no further complications. That's brilliant. Yeah. And you certainly know what the symptoms are at this point and also the treatment. So if anything else occurred. Whereabouts are you working today?
I'm working at Heal Urgent Care. It's in Newcastle. So it's a specialist like an emergency team that looks after your broken bones, your lacerations, your earaches. Minor illnesses, trying to keep people out of the emergency department. And it's a wonderful setting. Yeah.
Right. Do you think this whole journey of yours relating to your heart attack has changed your perspective at all on things, on life?
No. It never changed ever since I worked at the bone marrow transplant unit, and I've seen people that was coming in perfectly well, and then they've had a week of running nose, cough, symptoms like that, painful lips. Next thing they've been diagnosed with leukemia, and now they're in for a battle of their life. Some people lived and some people died, so you never know what was going to come. I was working, when I got to emergency, I was waiting for a little, at a stop sign, I was waiting for my little red man to turn green so I could walk across the road and go to work. 200 metres down the road, a lady was working for her little red man to turn green so she could walk across the road. Mine turned green. I walked across the road with the other 30 people. She waited down there for her little red man to turn green, got bumped from behind, fell down, a truck ran over her head.
That's horrible.
It's absolutely horrible. She got brought into work, and that's some of the hardest thing I've ever had to do. That was a disgusting thing to do. But it just goes to show you don't know when your life will be taken away from you or what might happen. So you might end up with something like a leukemia, or you might get bumped over and your life might end. So I've tried to live that way for my 30 years of nursing, that it could be my last day. And I think that's what prepared me and helped me for this. I was quite prepared if I did die that I was okay with it. I've travelled well. I've lived well. I've certainly done most things I've ever wanted to do in life. So if that was going to be the end of my story, I was okay with that.
I'm very glad it wasn't the end of it.
No, I've still got more stories to go. Yeah, I've still got more things to do.
You're still young.
Yeah, there's still plenty to do. Yeah.
You've got at least 3 or 4 more decades of trouble and mischief to get up to, I reckon.
Oh, I was going to say 2 more decades, but 3 is looking good.
Well, okay, so I really appreciate you walking us through this. Would you have any advice for anybody else that would be listening to this podcast and that is experiencing chest pain or just feeling just that not quite right? What would you suggest?
Seek help immediately. That was the thing that probably saved me and had less damage on my heart, was seeking help immediately. Even though it was my help, I still sought help. I still went down straight away. It was only 10 minutes after the chest pain. I started treatment as soon as I got there. So if you have the chest pain, call the ambulance, get them to come around where they can give you the aspirin, they can monitor you. Don't put it off and think it's nothing. If you're feeling unwell, if you're not sure, just ring for help. There's experts out there who will come around, who can do an easy test, who can do an ECG at the time, and let you know. We'll have people come through with chest pain, and the first things we'll do is do bloods at ECG and make sure that it isn't a heart attack. So don't put off symptoms. You're always welcome in an emergency department, or an ambulance will come out and see you. And that's the biggest thing. It's a reassurance that someone with expertise will come out and see you, rather than sitting at home wondering, am I having a heart attack? Yeah, the longer you wait at home, the longer you can do damage to your heart and the more repercussions you can have.
And they'll always treat you as a priority if you walk into an emergency department or if you call and say, I've got chest pain. You will be triaged and
you get triaged, and within 10 minutes you must have an ECG done. So that should be a reassurance that, you know, that either you are or you're other, but we may need to monitor you further because you're not having a heart attack, something else might be going on. But at least if you can see in that first 10 minutes whether you're having a heart attack, then they can be treated.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Now, you've sent through some amazing photos to us, and I was flicking through them just before I did this interview. It's got you swimming with whales. It's got you on top of ski fields or like right at the top of a mountain range. And adventure should be your second name, I think, Ryan.
I've travelled to 42 countries, and anything I'll do, I've done 34 skydives, I've done the bungee jumping, I've gone caving. You swum with the sharks, I swum with tiger sharks, whale sharks, whales, whatever adventure there is. I mean, going through Africa, going through South America, all those kind of experiences are wonderful. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Living
There's still
life.
more to go.
Living life by the day.
Absolutely. I usually just work, save over money, and then spend it on a holiday, come back broke, start again. So now I live life in a caravan. So rather than moving from place to place, not having my own house, I bought myself an off-road, off-grid caravan. Then I can just take that everywhere I go.
That's fabulous.
Still got the golf clubs, the surfboards, the fishing rods, and everything in there.
And the kayak.
And the kayak,
Thank you so much, Ryan. We wish you all the best. Look after that heart. Keep adventuring. And we want to know if you get up to any more perilous situations.
Lana, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Word of mouth is always the best promotion for a podcast. So if you enjoy this podcast or a specific story, please share with family and friends. If you haven't already, join our Facebook group called the Flying Doctor Podcast Community. And you can also send feedback, questions or comments to me directly at lana.mitchell@rfds.org.au. Donations to support the Royal Flying Doctor Service can always be made through our website at flyingdoctor.org.au.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, made possible with the support of RFDS National Partner HCF, Australia's largest not-for-profit health fund. HCF's partnership with the RFDS reflects its commitment to bettering healthcare access and outcomes for those in rural and remote regions. To learn more, visit hcf.com.au.